How many of you are ready to preach the gospel? At the turn of a dime, can you stand and preach the gospel with all authority and tell people about Christ? Now, if you look at Romans chapter 1, Paul is describing a type of faith here where he's ready to preach the gospel. From beginning to end, he could talk about what the gospel means. From the beginning of repentance and belief, going on to this transformed life by faith, leading into baptism, leading into a life that just is completely surrendered to the will of God, not looking back, not seeing Egypt any longer. A life that is given over to the gospel, ongoing faith in Jesus Christ, putting everything into the message of the cross and willing to preach it and live it in front of everybody, no matter what the situation is. Is that you? Do you have that type of faith? He says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. If you're ashamed at all of the gospel, you don't have this type of faith. If you're afraid of losing your job because you preach the gospel, if you're afraid of losing a friend, if you're afraid of having to let go of something in your life, whatever it might be, because of the gospel, that means you're offended by the gospel. You're not living like verse 16 says, where he says, I'm not ashamed. Not ashamed means that I don't care about anything compared to my faith in Jesus. Paul says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. It is the power of God, he says, to salvation for everyone who believes. Not just believe like the Egyptians believed. They had faith in all kinds of things. Like Moses believed. This is the power of God to salvation. Like Paul believed. Where the world's behind me and the cross is before me, that's who's going to be saved. All the rest are going to be drowned. You can't just have this make-believe little faith and think you're going to get through. You're not going to get through like that. And so the question is, do I have the type of faith of Abraham, or do I have the type of faith that the Egyptians had? Where do we fall in all this? Are we just making believe in our minds that we're trusting God and walking by faith? Or are we really doing it?